You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where England have finally won a test match in this Ashes. They've come close twice and it looked like they were going to come close 3 times and lose, but they got over the line. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by everyone from the Cricket Podcast. It's an exciting day, boys. It's our first trio show for a little while. We've got Max Roy Brown. How are you doing, Max Roy Brown?
Hello. I'm brilliant. Yeah, we won. I'm very happy. And Ross is here as well. So, as you mentioned, the three of us, the three amigos are back. So, doubly happy.
Yeah, Ross, how are you doing? We got bowled out for 64 yesterday.
Well, about bloody time we won, wasn't it? Lucky Aussies, always getting just the rub of the green. And on this occasion, it fell into England's hands. So, what a brilliant win. And was it ever in doubt with Chris Woakes? Don't think so.
No, he did pretty well. So did Wood. So did Harry Brook. There's a lot to talk about. We'll be covering all of the action from today, as well as looking back at what happened on Saturday. So there's plenty to get through. Before we do that, though, Ross, we should plug Serious Cricket right at the top of the show. Use the code TCP23 for 10% off cricket equipment. You can find a link to them in the show notes, and we urge you to take advantage of what is a good deal. It would have come in handy, Ross, if we'd had better equipment yesterday, wouldn't it? As we subsided to an 8-wicket defeat after we bowled out for 64. What serious cricket item would you buy to remedy that?
Probably like a super sopper or some covers would have been quite nice. Like the fact we played on uncovered pitches, it was 3.5 hours of torrential downpour, and then give it 10 minutes and it'll dry, and then we got skipped for 64, which was probably the most humiliating defeat I've ever had in cricket, and probably one of the worst Saturdays since last Saturday.
Good toss to win, was it?
Yeah, and they were very, very keen, unsurprisingly, Max, to get the game on. Very keen. And Jack didn't have the willpower as our captain to actually stand up to them and say, nah, I don't fancy it. So, we got absolutely humiliated in front of the 15 small children watching in London Fields.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Max, what happened in the cricket? You can start on Saturday and you can finish about 4 o'clock today, please.
Okay. So yesterday it started off with rain, much like your cricket and my cricket. It was wet to start with. We didn't get any play for a little while, but eventually we did, and the lights were on, and it was a bit dark, and it was perfect conditions for the England bowlers. And after a quick sort of salvo of 20 runs or so it proved, with England making early inroads into that Australian second innings. There was some good bowling from the likes of Broad and Woakes, some good catching from the likes of Harry Brook to spare the blushes of Jonny Bairstow once again, and then Mark Wood came back to almost finish off the tail, with Stuart Broad doing the honours. But obviously the standout man in all that was Travis Head, who single-handedly pretty much blasted the ball around the park to put Australia in a position where they had something to defend, I guess. I mean, without Travis Head 77, it was looking like England would be massive favourites. As it was, 251 the target, and everyone was thinking England should do it, but it's England, so who knows? Who knows what could happen? And a tricky period as well before close of play. I thought it would be 30 for 3 at the end, 27 for none. I'll take that all day long. And things got going pretty well this morning as well. The sun was out and it was a much better position. And by lunch, England 154 for 4. You're thinking this is done. This is over. Root and Stokes at the crease. Who could you want? Who else would you want to take England home to a comfortable Ashes victory? But nope, don't know what they had for lunch. Stupid sandwiches. Couldn't think of anything better than that. And suddenly it looked like we were going to bottle it all over again. But as you mentioned, Harry Brook batted very well up until the point that he got out, as is often the case for batters in cricket, and left the rest to Mark Wood and Chris Woakes, who finished it off with aplomb. And England have completed step 1 of 3 of the greatest comeback of all time. Obviously, the women won as well. So double Ashes crazy comeback is still on.
That's an interesting title you've come up with there, Max. Double Ash's crazy comeback.
Yep.
Where do we want to start, boys? Because there's a lot of cricket. Do you want to start with Harry Brook, man of the hour? Do you want to start with Chris Woakes and Mark Wood, the guys who brought it home? Let's give out some praise. Ross, come on. Who deserves praise in this scenario? Ross has done an amazing thing here. He's found.
Yeah, I've muted myself. That's what I've done. I have. That's the first time. That's the first time I've done that one. I think in 4 years. So I think a lot of praise obviously has to go to Brook, and I think what you saw there was someone who, I don't know, has a relatively simple game, I suppose, and had a pretty good temperament. He had a bit of a brain fade when the game was kind of pretty much won. This big was 20 odd runs to get or so, but he batted fantastically. And whilst people like Jonny Bairstow with more experience, Joe Root and Stokes obviously got out, both a little bit unfortunately, tickled down the leg side, but Brook showed a lot of composure. And for someone playing in there, I think this is his 10th Test match. He was absolutely remarkable against his bowling lineup. I think you also have to give a lot of credit for Mark Wood, who leaves this game with a strike rate of 250. He scored 40 runs in the Test match. Bowled as fantastically well, and then Woakes, his counterpart at the end, also looked completely untroubled. Like the guy looked very much like England's all-rounder in that role in Test cricket, and brought it home for us.
What a difference as well, having Woakes coming in at 8 to what we had on the last Test.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We'd promoted Moeen Ali. That was nice to get him up to number 3 as the sacrifice.
And we did talk, didn't we, Max? After the first day, we were talking a little bit about selection, and we actually called it out that England's thick tail
was going to take us home. The skunk tail.
The skunk tail. That's what we called it. Yeah, the skunk tail might prove crucial. So it was. I mean, it really, going through the day, I don't think I've been as sort of stressed watching a cricket match, maybe ever. The whole
probably not since
experience.
Headingley last time.
But even then, like it was such a shot to nothing that time.
Yeah.
That it was kind of, it was like, oh, there's a miracle happening. I'm going to watch the miracle. This was like in the bag for England. Like people were calling it, oh, this is really close. It's up for grabs. It's 50-50. Basically, no win predictor was saying that. The betting markets were saying it's massively in England's favour. The only time it actually wobbled was after the Bairstow wicket, and then it briefly went to 50-50 when Woakes was at the crease. But pretty much the whole day, it was England's to lose. And they really set about trying
to lose it.
trying to lose it until Woakes came in and was like, I'm going to, sort of knuckle down. I mean, this is a guy who averages 7 against Australian bouncers. He's a sort of player on a fairly bouncy wicket who you kind of thought might be there for the taking. The Australians were cycling through their pace bowlers with the bouncer field set, but he didn't rise to the bait. He played it pretty well, to be honest. And Brook at the other end, I thought Brook would take them home. It was lunacy. I thought how he ended up getting himself out.
No.
The whole thing.
I have to disagree with that. I think actually Harry Brook has not only played a really good innings and read the situation well and got England into basically a position where they'd won the game. He's also a brilliant reader of narratives and scripts. And all he did once again was sacrifice himself, just like he did getting out in the final of the T20 to cripple Shaheen Afridi. Sacrificed himself to give Mark Wood the option to blast a few runs at the end and take some glory, and for Chris Woakes to take some glory, because everyone loves Chris Woakes. He knows what people want. He knew what the crowd wanted, and he gave it to us. He got us where we needed to go, and gave the other two the opportunity to finish it off. And it was another act of perfectly selfless cricket from Harry Brook, and I have to applaud him for it.
It's a fair statement that you make there. I was watching along because I kind of when I'm making notes, I kind of to get an idea of where the game is at a given time. I do keep a track of the betting markets. The ball before Brook was out, I checked it. England were 1.02, which translates to about a 98% favourite to win. And he got out, and it went back to like, oh, Australia have got a 15-16% chance in this match, and it was one of those moments where you were like, surely this isn't going to happen. surely they cannot screw this up. I mean, like we've been talking about it reasonably fatalistically. I think in the last 2 Test matches, you have seen England make some interesting decisions and go through some passages of play that have gone against them because of the Australian skill, sometimes because of a little bit of luck, sometimes because of a combination, and lost. They have lost 2 matches where very close to the end they were favourite, and it felt like that could happen again. So well done to Chris Woakes for holding his nerve. He was talking about it afterwards. He said he was basically really enjoying it. He said, yeah, it was a bit stressful, but I was having a great time out there. It's where you'd want to be, isn't it, Ross? Out in the middle, leading your country to an Ashes victory, an Ashes victory which keeps them in the contest.
Yeah, I think so. And I think what kind of benefits of it, I know that we it took us bang on 50 overs to win this. England, as we all know, are a considerably better ODI side than Australia are. So, and we're
called that out too.
He did. And we're also, I don't know if our Australian and Indian listeners appreciate this, but we are double world champs in the white ball game. And so when we needed to chase a paltry 250 on a day on a nice batting deck, you're just like, it was never ever in doubt, really. And I think when you look at the bowling,
bloody arrogant Poms.
When you look at the bowling lineup from Australia as well, Boland absolutely awful this Test match. Like literally looked like, when we talk about the Big Bash League, I'm going full in here. He looked like a farmer. Like that's what we talked about, right? He was slain all over the place. Todd Murphy might as well have been like an actor. Like there was no point in him actually being there at all in this Test match. Contributed about 25 runs and wasn't trusted enough to bowl. And as much as Cummins and Stark are absolutely supreme talents, they needed more than Mitch Marsh as their kind of supporting cast. And Australia are going to rue, I think, their selection decision on that front.
Potentially, I mean, they have to rotate Hazelwood. I think he's quite a broken individual. So
I don't think Hazelwood.
It's a fair choice to go for a
good series either. I mean, he's got a few wickets, but a lot of those were that period where England hold out.
But I'm a big Michael Neser fan, and I think Michael Neser would have been a big difference maker here. And I think
they did send him off to go and play county cricket.
Yeah, he would have been a better choice. And like Boland hasn't looked that threatening in the previous 2 Test matches either, or the previous one that he's played in. Michael
it didn't look threatening at all in the match he didn't play in.
His stock actually rose. That was the difficulty. He didn't play. It was like, we maybe get Boland back in. But I definitely would have looked to play Michael Neser in this one. But again, it was a really, really tight Test match. It was played in with a brilliant spirit of cricket. But in Australia, unfortunately, on this time, even though we dropped a load of catches, they've still managed to lose.
There's no such team as we, Ross. There's no such team as we. I'm going to call you out on that one.
We're not.
I think exactly. I do think picking Boland isn't like a catastrophic selection error. His bowling average just went above 20 in this match, thanks to him getting hit around a little bit.
But games aren't played on spreadsheets, mate. So
I do think he doesn't match up that well against this England batting lineup, because I think they see him as a little bit too predictable. And he is, and if the ball doesn't move, then he can be got after, and I think we've seen that in both of the games. And on Murphy, I mean, this was interesting. I mean, let's get into some detail and talk about tactics, Pat. I think the view on the podcast has generally been that he's actually managed the situation quite well in the field. He's put people back on the boundary early. He has kind of worked out that with the way England play, you can rely on your best bowlers to bowl an awful lot of the overs, and the supporting cast, they only need to shoulder a spell or 2 per innings, because him and Lyon in the first Test and Stark today and last week can really get stuck in, because England don't bat for longer than 80 overs.
Yeah, 80 overs is top end, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think he's been about right, and he'll get blamed for today, and I think there were spells, particularly when Woakes came in, where the field was very back, and England were just sort of knocking ones. And it was like,
well, you're going to do that to the Wizard, aren't you? You're going to do that to the Wizard.
But this is the thing. Like, Woakes is actually a decent player. If you give him singles both sides of the wicket, he will pick them up. He's not just going to get out because he's you bowled a bouncer. Like it needs a little bit more planning that. So I think I'd be a bit critical there. I don't think this was the match for all the innings for Todd Murphy. I think England are going to try and chase it in 50 overs. Therefore, if you're Pat Cummins, you're thinking at least 30 of those overs need to be bowled by myself and by Stark. And I don't know, has anyone got the scorecard up? Because I reckon that's probably what they ended up doing. I reckon it was...
It was 15 for Cummins, 16 for Stark, 11 Boland, 6 Marsh and 2 for Todd Murphy. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really a lot in it for the spinners anyway, was there? I mean, Moeen only got a few to grip and bounce yesterday, but, in fairly harmless positions. It always looks impressive when you bowl it sort of outside the left-handers off stump and it takes off, but you can fairly comfortably leave that. It's not necessarily a particularly threatening line and length or anything. So I think it's arguably you could question whether there was a need for a spinner in this game at all. But I mean, if you want to go in with that setup, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I was I don't know what I think it was you guys on the podcast, wasn't it, on Friday when Ben Stokes went ballistic. I wasn't overly enamoured with the Todd Murphy plan then, although it did. I thought that was really almost dumb. Work. It did. He did get Stokes out. Yeah, he got Stokes out, but it was like
he did drop one bowler.
He did drop him as well. So you could have said it was a stroke of genius if he holds on to that, but I wasn't sure.
I thought that was a bit odd too, and I think if we want to go back and we want to look at where the Test match was won and lost, and there's plenty more talking points, but I think one of the England players, maybe Brook, basically said Australia lost this match because they scored at 2 and over against us on day 2. I think that's true, and I think letting Stokes just blast the only guy on the team who he was definitely going to be able to hit for 6 all over the place for 5 overs was pretty dumb.
Especially as they had a plan against him last week, right? When they were doing it,
they
literally figured out we can hide it across here, and he literally is not going to be able to get there. And then it was like, we can get him with a different plan. It's like, no, you figured out the plan. Stick to the plan. I also think that I was literally that's what I was going to come in on your point, Max. I think that we're doing that classic thing that the media have done, I think, with the kind of England side. They're turning around and we're blaming the Australian bowling unit here for this loss. Actually, they lost it in the batting. That's exactly where they lost it. Yeah. They had the opportunity.
I'm not really. I'm sort of. I mean, maybe the tactics in that first innings cost them some runs, but I mean, at the end of the day, what they were doing was trying to defend a score that was, I'd say, 65% of the time, maybe 70% would probably be chased down. Like there wasn't not really any demons in the pitch. There was a bit of extra bounce from a few, which accounted for some people, but ultimately it was still a pretty good batting deck. It was it was day 4 and there'd been a bit of rain, so day 3/3.5 when you'd expect it generally to be good for batting. So I would agree with that, with Brooks and your assessment about the batting probably being where it went wrong.
There's plenty of brain fades, and that was on both sides as well. But you look at that period of play when Labuschagne got out and Smith got out. 2 huge wickets just gifted against Moeen Ali. And as you said, the ball wasn't turning, was it really? And they just let Moeen Ali bowl. And you saw in the first test when he wrecked his finger, they could attack him. And I think they, Jack, I think
and he was still bowling the odd giant full toss as well.
So, that's sort of the way I read it. I thought it was interesting that a player would basically say that, but that's England.
I like it. I mean, it does fit the Bazball narrative, doesn't it? That's I suppose one side of things. So they are going to come out and say it.
We have talked about Australia's bowling, which was a big talking point. We have talked about Woakes and Wood, and a little bit about Brook. Should we take a break and then we'll come back? I want to get an idea from you two about what you made of Brook and where the England team might go with him playing an innings like that, which was a real statement inning. So we'll hit the break button and we shall come back in a moment. If you're watching on YouTube, do hit like, do hit subscribe, do leave us a comment as well. Say hello if you're in the live chat, and obviously if you're on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, all of these things, just hit the subscribe button and keep the podcast growing. We do shows pretty much after every day's play. We take Saturdays off, so there's plenty of content there, and we will continue through the summer and into the World Cup later in the year. So there's plenty for you to get your teeth into. Back in a second.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast for part 2 of our episode on England's win. They've won a match in the Ashes. It took a little while for them to decide that winning was just as good as entertaining. And they delivered both. They delivered both, in fairness to them, in this match. I said we wanted to talk a little bit about Harry Brook. Max, he played the match-winning innings. Obviously, he gets out, so he doesn't get to score the winning runs and take all the glory, and you covered that. He'd had a fairly quiet Ashes in the 5 innings to date. Obviously, experiment at 3 didn't seem to suit him in the first innings. Back at 5, how big do you think this is as a step in his career? Obviously, the fastest man to 1,000 runs in terms of balls faced. He's made some statements in Test cricket already, but this is effectively cricket's equivalent of the World Cup, or English cricket's equivalent of the World Cup, isn't it? It matters that you do it in the Ashes.
Yeah, I think so. It answers probably. I don't know if there were many questions. I think he's not had an incredible series, but he's not looked like he's out of place or anything. There was the Lords in the Lords Test. He was going pretty well. He got a 50, didn't he? And then basically got out doing the same thing today. That was one interesting point. It was kind of the same wicket. They had everyone back behind square basically, and he tried to slap it where there weren't any fielders and got it wrong again. So that was quite interesting. But so I mean, I wasn't hugely worried about his performances so far, but I think this was a step up in terms of taking on responsibility and showing that I'm going to take the team home and I'm going to be the guy who needs to stand up for my team and do it. So there was, I guess, a level of maturity and I suppose bravery to continue playing in a pretty attacking way. I mean, he ends with a strike rate of 80, which is not to be sniffed at in the situations when England were under the pump a little bit. So it's another tick in the box. But I think obviously Moeen Ali batting at 3 didn't really work either. But I thought I liked it as given that you had 11 players to work with, so you couldn't just draft in someone else to come and play at 3. I actually liked it as a move because of what it does for Harry Brook. Because Harry Brook at 5 is 5-6 is where he's been. It's where he's comfortable batting. It's where all of his runs have come from. And I think getting him back in a situation where he's more comfortable was probably where the gain is. It wasn't so much about will Moeen Ali batting at 3 work. It was, will we get more out of Harry Brook at 5? Almost certainly yes. Will there be a massive difference between Moeen Ali batting at 3 and 7? Probably not. I said to a friend of mine, Moeen Ali 3 and 7, probably not much difference. He's either going to score 5 or 25. So the 50-50 split worked for me there. So I mean, as a plan, I liked that, and as it proved in the end, it worked for Harry Brook. But
I think.
Go on, Ross.
Moeen Ali did a good job in the first innings, I thought, and Jack and I had a bit of a debate around that, whether it was kind of too slow or kind of a good inning. I thought it was exactly what they kind of needed at that point. And today, I think that's what they were probably looking for as well, just to kind of be like, look, can you just get some overs in Stark and come into legs, and then try and get some runs here.
Back to the Dentry plan.
Yeah, he got a good ball from Stark. The start delivery was a sharp one. It was just way too good for him. But Moeen Ali here is not playing for his future. He's not playing for any of these things, right? Who knows if he plays the next 2 Test matches? I'm guessing he will play at Old Trafford. You typically play a spinner at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of one of those win-win situations. And yeah, I'm really thankful that it paid off. And Brook looked pretty fantastic, and I think where it does raise questions, and I know they absolutely love Jonny Bairstow, big fan of Jonny Bairstow, but we do have that succession plan now well in place at number 5. Like, he literally is, that is Harry Brook's place in this team, I think now.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I did think, I mean, he did look very good. I don't want to take too much away from Brook, but I do think there should be an acknowledgement from us on the podcast that England rode their luck in this Test when they made mistakes.
They got the easy conditions to bat
all
in.
the conditions.
I mean, like earlier in the series, everyone was like, "Oh, well, Australia always bat when it's cloudy. It's unfair," and that was true. But the ball tracking data suggested that it didn't really make a difference. Like England weren't moving the ball around at all, and that didn't matter. I think in this test, Australia did have to bat when it was noticeably harder. Like you could just eye test it and see that it was harder to bat. Also, like every time England dropped the ball, Australia hit another chance immediately. To make sure they didn't really capitalise that, apart from in the Marsh situation.
That happened to us yesterday as well. In my game, there was an edge that went straight through between me and first slip, and we're still arguing about whose catch it was. But the next ball, thanks, Ross. The next ball got the guy on strike who we wanted to get out, and the bowler has literally bowled an unplayable delivery that's like nibbled in the air and then hit the pitch and kissed the pitch and seamed away and hit the top of off stump. Literally the ball after. So I've decided the Bairstow sacrifice it's a real thing, and just use it.
And just on Brook in the second innings, in the innings today, he did hit the ball in the air through gully about 5 times. And it just didn't. I mean, like obviously, if you don't have a gully,
he picked the gap.
Yeah, but it is that it's not inconceivable that goes to third slip instead. But I think over the series that probably balances it out, and the fact Robinson goes down with an injury and a few other things don't go England's way.
I think sooner rather than later it kind of balances itself out. Right?
Yeah, mainly. Longer term, it's interesting with Brook. So you saying he's nailed on at number 5, because I think there's another man we should turn our attention to, and we've had some questions about this. Bairstow, for this series, obviously he's started as the wicketkeeper. He has not really kept that well, I think, if we're being diplomatic. His batting,
very kind.
His batting in particular against Stark, and somebody pointed this out in the chat, and it is true, is weak. He has a big weakness against what Stark does, like basically the ability to move it in or bowl one that goes across. And he doesn't really know how to line Stark up. He averages 15 against Stark. It's a bit like Root and Cummins. Root is the perfect batter for Cummins to bowl to in a way, because Root will try and steer the ball to third man all the time, and the extra bounce that Cummins gets him out. Same problem for Bairstow. So his batting has been sort of muted. In the first test, he got runs, but there was no Stark, and now there is Stark, and it looks a little bit worrying. There'll be calls for folks to come in, and we don't know whether he will for the next test. I think probably I would make some sort of a change.
I think you surely have to make a change though. Like literally, it's like you can't just drop. You literally can't be celebrated for taking a regulation wicketkeeper catch. That can't be the thing, and then not contribute with the bat. If you were making those mistakes, but you were slamming the ball everywhere, completely fair enough. But yeah, he's had one good innings so far in this Test series. The 78
in the match,
78.
Stark didn't play. And Stark's going to play the next 2 matches. So.
Yeah, so you're in that position, and you're just like, you can't keep on taking these chances. And look, Bairstow was the best player on the planet when Bazball was kind of taking hold, and at the moment it just feels like they rushed him back a little bit too soon on this front.
I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done with Bairstow. He's used up all of my sympathy very, very quickly. But they're not going to. I don't think they're going to make a change. I really don't.
No, I don't think they will. But I think longer term, the fact that Brook is quite clearly the man of the future at number 5, and that England are going to India, I think, for their next Test series. Maybe you can get away with Bairstow for 2 more tests in England. I think it's a bad decision to stick with him, because it's clearly not working, is it? But in India especially, surely they can't make that call, and then where do they go from there? Where do they go with Bairstow from there is a pretty difficult question. Another thing, I mean, like just on this, we might as well go into all the things that are wrong with England. We've got Zak Crawley still opening the batting as well. I mean, this is
absolutely doing great. He's doing bloody brilliantly.
You forget that this is still happening. He's played 39 Test matches now. He averages 28. It's one of. I was thinking about this today. I cannot think of another experiment in sports at any decent level of sport that has gone on for this long without producing anything substantial in the way of repayment.
I don't know.
mean, like,
Frank Lampard's managed an awful lot of games for different clubs.
They tried it twice as well. That was insane.
Yeah, I mean, like Frank Lampard's actually quite a good comparison. There are probably some football managers who have got jobs that they shouldn't have got, but I can't think in terms of players. I just can't think of another player. I
think we're seeing shoots of green. I think it's now I've got Stockholm syndrome on it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking.
Like him and Duckett have now got the highest opening average as a partnership since Strauss and Cook. Like,
yeah, it was second to Cook and Compton, but yeah, it's.
And like that, I think we're on an upward trajectory for the Crawley Duckett.
Well, of course, you're on an upward trajectory. The start was 0, but possibly less than 0.
Max, what I like about what England are doing is that we've gone not to cricket to actually figure this out. We've actually gone early England 2000s football, and we've actually gone for the little guy and big guy opening up top. That's what we've got. We've got Michael Owen and Heskey. We've got Defoe and Peter Crouch. That's what we've gone for with the Crawley Duckett thing, and it seems to be working.
Well, I mean, from a genuinely serious point of view, there might actually be something in that. You know, in terms of the lengths you bowl, like Ben Duckett. Likes playing off the back foot, players. And if it doesn't take you a lot in terms of dragging your length back for it to be a short ball to Ben Duckett and for him to play on it. Zak Crawley's the exact opposite. Loves to drive, and if it's just a little bit too full, he's got such long levers, he will drive you. So I mean, there is something in that potentially, but the Zak Crawley thing is like it blows my mind. Like it genuinely is Stockholm syndrome. What's happened? Like he's got to a point where he was so bad for so long, he's now being okay, and everyone's like, he's having a great series. Look at him go! Like he scores 40, and it seems to be to me. It seems to be to me like Zak Crawley thinks 40. That like in order to average 40 as a Test match cricketer, you get to 40, you're like, well, I've done my job now. I average 40. I'm just going to get out.
It is completely bonkers. I think that this is still happening, and that.
But it's happening.
But it is happening. It's been covered up. I mean, like I know that the partnership works, and that is like a fact. But I think Duckett is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in there. A guy who averages 50.
I'm completely converted. I'm a Zak Crawley buyer.
Okay,
I want to see him play 100 tests for England, and then him still average. Still average less than 30. And I'm going to what a ride that is going to be.
I don't even know what they're actually hoping to kind of get out of this at this point. I mean, I actually quite like watching Zak Crawley bat. He's a good. He
looks brilliant. He looks completely at home.
I suppose at least he's not like chewing it up and making it look like absolute.
Exactly.
Absolute I would much rather when he's doing it. I'll give him.
Yeah,
that.
Look, if it's Zak Crawley,
it's just the surprise that when he literally sticks off, he's like, oh, "I've done it again." Literally, you saw it today. He was always crying at the crease. He's like, "I've done it again. I'm so sorry." And literally, he's like swinging his bat.
Was it the first innings or the Lords? I think, maybe the Lords Test. Like Zak Crawley got to 48, and Michael Vaughan was like, "Now this is the point where Zak Crawley tends to just nick one to the slips, and literally next ball he nicked it straight to second slip." It's like. Again,
it's just
stop it.
It's like someone with narcolepsy. It's literally someone like that with narcolepsy. It literally is the most important part. Just, I'm so sorry for falling asleep in your wedding ceremony. I'm so sorry. It's happened. This is the 5th time it's happened.
People still keep inviting me. They know it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
They still let me come.
Exactly. I've worn this suit 16 times in a row.
Look, it is what it is, and it's never going to end. And the people have actually stopped talking about him being an issue. It's just like
let's just move on. It's not going to change, right? It's not going to change. It's like someone's like, it's like your uncle's alcoholism, right? Someone's just like, just don't mention it. You know he's going to get drunk. It's fine. Anyway, yeah. So Zak Crawley continues. Will Moeen Ali continue at 3? That's what I want to know.
Right. Well, this is a good question. I have no idea what the sort of thought process is sometimes. I think for the same reason that they're opening with Crawley, I think they might keep Moeen at 3 because if it comes off, it could be potentially devastating. Like, make no mistake about it, Crawley kicking off the innings with runs quickly and being on 40 or 50 balls really, really did put Australia under pressure. And actually, genuinely, the fact that he's tall and can like pull a ball off a length because of that and reach miles down the wicket, and is very different to a lot of the other England batters in terms of the balls he tries to score off. He's always trying to like pelt a good stack. This is why he gets out all the time. He's always taking on really good balls and trying to ping them through the covers. And I think there's something to I think there is genuinely thought process there that it's like, if we have this guy, he can disrupt the other team, even if he's not scoring runs. So I think that's what they're doing there. Oh, will they justify, or can they justify Moeen in the same terms? A left-hander who is very fluent through the covers, maybe batting at 3, they can't immediately go to bouncers, which is a problem. I mean, like, it's a massive problem that England have got a player who they're thinking about batting at 3, who just immediately hits the ball really high as soon as you bowl short to him.
I'm going to plant this in. I'm going to plant this in the stands.
Every single time, though, it's like you don't even have to bowl a good bounce. You just bowl it short, and he hits it straight up. It's
according to Easy Ollie in our chat, Stokes poo-pooed that he'd do it in the next kind of couple of Test matches.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
okay, I think it was. I don't think it was long term. I think it was.
It was
exactly,
fun.
I think it was, but I think it was literally just to get Harry Brook back to a position where he's more comfortable.
The answer is pretty clearly Joe Root at 3, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, like that.
He doesn't want to do it. He's just scared to do it. Bless him.
He doesn't want to do it, but like, what is the difference between Joe Root batting at 4 if your number 3 is going to face 11 balls, or however many balls Harry Brook faced the other day? Probably about it was 11 in the first innings, wasn't it? It was 15 for Moeen Ali. So yeah, I mean, what's that? That's 2 overs worth, so maybe 4 overs more. And if your opening batters are actually facing some balls, I mean, the distinction between 3 and 4 at that point basically doesn't exist.
Max, all I'm hearing from you, and we're going to go back to, is the dentary. That's all I'm hearing at number 3. 3 is for the person to eat up those balls so Joe Root can survive a little bit longer. That's the only reason 3 exists when it's not. I
mean, it was from another time, wasn't it? But
Tom
it is
Sibley,
a question.
pack your England tracksuit. Come on, the fridge.
It is a question for England because, I mean, if they're not going to go with Joe Root, and yeah, obviously Moeen Ali is not really sustainable. The fact that Ben Stokes can't bowl is an issue, because it means you can't replace Ollie Robinson with a batter who's going to come in and play 3, because then you're too light on the bowling. I mean, we got away with it because Australia helped us out a bit in this test, but you can't go in with Broad, Woakes and Wood and a spinner. That's going to be too much for all of them, I think. And then what does Anderson come in for Robinson? Then you're back to mega long tail. So I mean, there is a really difficult decision to make here, and that's probably the other reason the way Ben Stokes won't make it in. I mean, you could if Ben Stokes could bowl. If Ben Stokes could bowl, genuinely, I wouldn't be surprised if they went with something like bringing in Folkes for Robinson and having Bairstow at 3 or Folkes at 3 or something crazy like that. But without Stokes bowling, they're stuck. A bowler has to come in. So, where do you go? Sam Curran?
Well, yeah, look, we're going to take another break. We'll come back and we'll talk about what's going to happen next. Final thing, we've got maybe a minute left of this part. I did think that England got a lot right, and you saw in this match, just as a final observation, how difficult it can be to play against England. We were criticising Australia for scoring too slowly, and I think they did, and I think that's why they've lost the match. But that third innings, when you've got a really slim lead, and you know that England are a good chasing side, and that they've got and they're effectively going to go after anything, and that the pitch is probably going to get better, it's a really hard innings to get right, and that is the value in the way that they play. I do not think there is a chance in hell that England win that match 2 years ago, even with the same players. Even Brook is a much better player than whoever England had before.
They're probably back for the draw for 2 days.
But it's sort of crazy stuff like that. They would have definitely not got the runs in 50 overs. They'd have had to face a second new ball.
Yeah.
Murphy becomes a much bigger factor because he would be able to tie up an end, because if they just didn't try and score any runs off spinners. And and I think on top of all of that, I think the Australian third innings, which is the hardest innings in Test cricket, I think the Australian third innings is much easier against a team that are predictable and aren't going to try and chase the game. If it'll chase the runs in 50 overs.
It happened at Lords as well. I mean, like Australia ended up losing quite a few wickets in a short space of time, and part of that, I mean, they sent out Nathan Lyon at the end because that was because they were scared that he was going to chase it down. I mean, part of that was the pitch was decent and obviously like it was chaseable, but like you say, the old England aren't going to chase that, and the things that England have done in the fourth innings, it changes the way you need to approach that, and it definitely has an effect on the way they go about it. So I think that's a very fair point to make.
Ross, did you have something to add just to round off part two?
No, I think Max said it quite beautifully, really. So let's have a little quick break and then come back.
Cool.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast for part three, the final part of this week's episode. We've got some questions through on Twitter. If you've got any questions on YouTube, drop them in the chat. And we're going to talk, I think, a bit about what happens next. Will we see changes from either team? Will we see lots of changes? Maybe. It's 9 days. There's a little bit of rest. There's time. Going to plug Manscaped quickly, though. Use the code CricketPod for 20% off, plus free shipping. Take care of your family jewels with the best tools in the business. It is Smooth Sack Summer. We've done the copy for Smooth Sack Summer, so we're not gonna laugh our way through that again. But it is a fun phrase to say. So head over to manscaped.com, use the code CricketPod, get 20% off plus free shipping on us. That's us. There's another gift to you. Not only can you get your cricket equipment, you can get your ball shaving and face shaving equipment. More on that to follow in the subsequent episode.
Maybe don't use it on the same part, though.
Yeah. They're two different things. Get your nose trimmer, all of that business. Like I say, code's CricketPod, 20% off plus free shipping. Right. There are some talking points. We've got Stokes. Is he crocked? Is Moeen going to play? We think Moeen's going to play. That's not a massive talking point. Is Robinson going to be fit? Is Wood going to be fit? Do they keep going with Broad? Does Anderson come in to bowl at the James Anderson end? There's a lot of questions for England. Then on the Australian side, Boland is a big problem for Australia, the way this series is panning out. Like you can't have your third seamer going at 5 and over, carrying no wicket threat. They don't really like the spinner. It's pretty clear they don't think he's up to too much in these conditions, at least. And they've got a big problem with Davey Warner at the top of the order. Which team do you want to do first, boys? We've got to do both of them. Balanced podcast. Where are we going to go?
I say start with Australia because we just finished.
Let's start with Australia. Okay, well, we've got Warner, Max. We've got not his name's not Lyon, is it? It's Murphy. Lyon went home. And we've got the Boland situation. Give me the answers. Okay,
so Warner. What else are you going to do? I mean, is it Marcus Harris? Is he the backup?
Yeah.
I think you stick with Warner. I think he's had some pretty belligerent innings in the first couple. Yeah, Broad's come in and Broad's done his thing to David Warner, and maybe there's a hint of that coming back to bite him. But I don't think necessarily getting rid of David Warner will solve a whole lot. But Ross did put his hand up, so I'm going to let him challenge me on that.
I think they're going to drop Warner and they will play both Cam Green and Mitch Marsh, and either they'll open with Marsh or Labuschagne.
I think you're insane.
That is a fucking bonkers thing to say.
That's what I reckon will happen.
That would be genuinely insane. That's insane for so many reasons. One, Labuschagne is a really good number 3.
Or head opened for Australia, didn't he, recently?
He did in India.
But Head's doing really well.
Yeah, so they're going to change the order there. The other problem I have with that, and no disrespect to Mitch Marsh, but he just isn't that good.
Mate, he is good. He is good. Like literally, I think you just underestimate the Bison.
I can't. I just can't. I just cannot take him seriously with the career.
And that's why he battered 100 against England. Like,
well, no, it was a magnificent 100. It was a brilliant 100, and it's a great story, and I'm really happy for him. But I think if you're dropping a specialist opener to accommodate Mitch Marsh, you've lost the plot. Like, there is room in that team for one seam bowling all rounder, and it is probably Cam Green, tomorrow's man. And if you don't think Green's up to the job, you go with Marsh.
With the way England have been batting, we talked about the fact they barely even need the extra seamer because, like, England don't bat enough overs for it to be relevant. So, if you've got Cam Green and Mitch Marsh, one of them basically isn't going to bowl, and then you've just lost half of what the point of them is.
So I think it's Harris or Warner, and I think they probably will stick with Warner. So let's. I think that's probably what they'll do. I do think, Ross, that you might be onto something on the Boland point. So if Boland comes out and they don't want to go with Hazelwood, I think there is the potential that they go with two seam bowling all-rounders. Is that a more reasonable possibility?
That's more reasonable. It's a far more sensible thing to do. Of course it is. But it's also very funny if Australia literally they lose one game and it's a really, really close game, right? Warner doesn't contribute in this game. He actually looked, I didn't think, too bad in the last two tests. Literally, he was being aggressive. He was what they kind of wanted up front. But it would be really funny if they did press the
guy who gets out 17 times to the opposition's opening bowler.
Yeah, but he also what? I think he hit that 70 odd against us as well, whatever it was, and was trying to be attacking.
66, yeah.
Yeah, well, but there's still that bit of like if they want to try and fight fire. If they want to try fight fire with fire on that front and be like, look, we know that Khawaja is going to stay there. Is Warner going to be someone who can be the aggressive kind of pinch hitter almost in the twilight of his career?
You know you've won the battle when the other team are making selections in order to replicate the Zak Crawley strategy.
Well, there we go. But I would, as you say, Hazelwood has been injured before this. He obviously missed kind of the first Test match. He was missing. He missed the World Test Championship final. Sorry, and they've kind of been managing that workload. But I'm not sure they can actually play Boland again in this Test series. That's genuinely how bad I think it's gone for Scott Boland in this one. He might have been absolutely amazing in Australia, but England kind of figured out actually how to play against him and are probably scoring north of 4 and over off him, probably at least 3.8.
More than 4.
And you're sitting there going, do you know what? That they just can't contain that. So the other option is they bring in Michael Neser, who's also no mug with a bat, if I'm perfectly honest. And I seem like a Michael Neser stan, which is a rare thing to be, but there you go.
Cool, and they probably stay with Murphy, right? Nobody thinks they're going to jettison Murphy and go with loads of seam. Maybe they drop him for Mitch Marsh.
But I think what you said was probably right. In this regard, they didn't have enough runs on the board to go for it. Max was spot on that the pitch wasn't doing too much for the spinners, and they had to try and take wickets with their best bowling lineup. Old Trafford typically turns a little bit more. And provides a little bit more for them. England, I have no doubt that England will pick Moeen Ali and will play Joe Root as the kind of two spinners for them. Australia can't go in with it being Travis Head as their spinner and Steve Smith offering a bit of leg spin.
No, they can't.
Don't forget mine.
And then on the England side, and we'll do another podcast on this. We don't need to get all of our ideas out there now. But Robinson has had, if he's got a bad back. There's 9 days now. They can probably rest him they could rest him for the next test. Then he could come back for the Oval. I still think Robinson is one of England's best bowlers. I think Broad's probably out bowling him at the moment, but I think Robinson is really, really good. But if he's injured, you don't want to play him. Wood, definitely picking. Woakes, probably going to ride that train, aren't you, after that performance? Where do they go if they get rid of Robinson? There's Tong, there's Anderson.
It's Old Trafford. Anderson's home ground. Yeah. I do think England, as much as they are the vibes team, they're also a bit of a narrative team, and they're a little bit sentimental on that front. And I think kind of go for Anderson in that space.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they're the things that we can expect to happen next.
Obviously, Folks comes back in, right, Max?
Yeah. Exactly. He's going to open the batting. They're actually going to drop Zak Crawley, I've heard.
Zak Crawley's going to keep? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I would love to see Zak Crawley keep.
He's got good hands. He's just some pretty sharp catches in this Test match.
He's really tall as well. So
it's good that someone can catch in the slips, isn't it?
This is another underrated thing about Zak Crawley. In a team of players who can't catch the ball, having one guy who pretty dependably catches the ball is
Genuinely reckon that's part of the reason he's in the side as well.
it's valuable. It's valuable. I mean, who else are they going to put a second slip? Come on,
I reckon Crawley's got some decent chat in the slip cordon as well, which I think is a big part of kind of playing cricket.
He does look like someone who would have chat, even though his career has basically been a complete disaster.
I think it would be
he'd
really,
quite
really
happily chat away.
like really bad chat, but so bad that it's quite funny. That's the level I expect.
Yeah. More leaves than a tree. That kind of.
Yeah, that kind of thing. All the
absolute
cliches.
drivel.
Yeah.
It's just, like an old hack comic.
Join the dots.
Exactly. Yeah. Join the dots. Let's go through some questions from Twitter. The Cricket Louch says, we'll be quick with these. We've got about 10 minutes left. I know you guys would like to see Australia persist with Warner, but the question is, will they? We've answered that one. I don't know why I read it out. We think that they will, don't we? We do think that they will.
I think so.
DFC's got a question from County Cricket. Thoughts on Bell Drummond's unbeaten 300 v Northamptonshire and general good form this season, including the Blast? Is Daniel Bell Drummond the answer at number 3, Max?
Daniel Bell Drummond's actually he's a quality cricketer. It's quite a surprise that he hasn't been mentioned much in the sphere, I suppose. He's probably, I don't know off the top of my head how old he is now, but he's been around for a while, hasn't he? So perhaps maybe at the start of his county career was suffered from the fact that England were fairly settled. But
he's 29.
It's 29. Oh, okay. Well,
29.
not the world's worst shout then. I feel Daniel Bell Drummond feels like someone who's been around for quite a long time. I'm surprised he's.
So our friends, the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, sporadically tweet every now and again that Daniel Bell Drummond is eligible to play for the West Indies and he should be in the West Indies Test match side. So
he definitely should.
Yeah.
Definitely should. As good as it is that the opening pair for the West Indies is King Charles.
This is also maybe it's a little bit disrespectful, but like Northants aren't exactly the creme de la creme of like the county sides.
They're not Australia. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Cool. Next question. We had one from HSN. We've seen that. We've answered it. It was about Robinson. Rubbish Cricketer says, if Stokes is injured in the next match, who should captain England? I think that Stokes would play as a specialist captain before they would choose someone else.
I genuinely think someone's going to have to blow his legs off. Like, legit, it would be that bit. Like, it would go against kind of every grain of who he is and what he stands for. I think to do that, he would much rather kind of go as the captain. Stuart Broad.
Broad. I'd love to see that. I mean, obviously you want to see Stokes play, but if he doesn't, Broad would be the absolute kingpin to be.
I generally think he would glue a tiara to his sun hat. That is what I think he'd go for. Like, to have some kind of crowning ceremony for that bit.
G says this has got to be the first Ashes series where the first 3 tests have all seen both teams spend time as favourites going into the final hour or two. Surely, yeah. I mean, I actually can't remember a single test series where
brilliant.
Realistically, in the final 30 overs of the match, both teams have at points probably had a greater than 50% chance of winning. Australia might not have got there today. I think there's a little bit of shell shock from England fans that England were actually favourites for most of the day, and they did nearly let it slip once, but they were, generally speaking, actually in control of that match. And it sounds weird to say that after going through all the stress, but if this was a game between Sri Lanka and New Zealand were batting last, you probably wouldn't even bother watching it. You'd have been like, "Oh, New Zealand are going to win that match." It's because of what's happened in the last 2 tests and the fact that it was Australia and the fact that the series is poised as it is that I think made it feel a bit more stressful than it was. Having said that, incredible cricket, incredible series, and
it deserves to be 2-1. I think, like, either which way, it probably deserves to be 2-1. Right, the games have been so close, and as you say, that pendulum has swung each way. And just when one team's getting ahead, the other team takes a wicket, or someone hits some quick runs or whatever. But if this was 3-0 and the Ashes was over, like either side, right, this is as a complete neutral, you'd be sitting there going, "What a waste." But now it's 2-1.
cricket,
Like the double super mega comeback, as Max called it earlier, whatever he called it, is well and truly on. And the 3-2 prediction of this podcast is well and truly on as well.
Yeah, could well happen. And then we had a question from Chak, but I'm not going to get to that one. Thanks for sending it in, but it's a little bit incongruous about the T20 leagues. So
there's one from Tim in the chat saying,
"Yeah, go for it."
Saying, will the Old Trafford Test be Anderson's final Test match?
No,
I think
my call on that.
I think they're weeing him out until they possibly, but they can't do it anymore.
Yeah. I think there'll be a ceremony. Yeah, I think that is more likely. I think there's a chance that even if they don't play him for the rest of this year, they kind of invite him back for one of is it Sri Lanka and New Zealand next year, or Sri Lanka West Indies? Just give him one of those matches wherever he wants to play and be like, this is the retirement test. I think they are a little bit sentimental, as you say, Russ, about that,
and deservedly so. I think for someone like Jimmy Anderson, right? I think, and maybe I mean, he doesn't come across as the most what's the word? Ego-driven person when it comes to the big fanfare and all this kind of stuff. You saw it with kind of Alistair Cook, who he's obviously very good friends with, and when he hit the century against India, and kind of said, "Look, I'm retiring out here." So I think it'll be on Anderson's terms, as you say, Jack, and he'll probably have the pick of whatever he wants to do, right? As he's England's greatest of all time bowler.
Right, guys. Final reflections on the day's
We're
play.
gonna win 3-2.
All right, well, Ross, you go first. Is that all you've got?
I generally think it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The whole thing, the whole Test series so far has been so like enthralling. You cannot take your eyes off it. I was literally sitting there out for lunch today like a teenager with a headphone in. So literally I've got my dad and it was my girlfriend's birthday, and I'm literally sitting there going, I can't not do it. I was like a kid in a classroom, where they put the old headphone up your sleeve just so you could be just like, I'm going to listen to ghetto gospel or whatever it was I was listening to when I was 13 years old. And yeah, it is. And what I also like about it, I think you tweeted it before, Jack, around this is the first time since 2005 that cricket is well and truly like smashing through all mainstream media and everything. Like everybody is talking about it. Everyone is watching it. It is just brilliant. I know people will talk about free-to-air view and all this kind of stuff, but there's so many people on the trains listening to TMS, all that kind of stuff. It's just everyone I talk to and everyone who is mentioning it is just alive. I love it.
That'd be my reflection.
England single-handedly saving Test cricket, Ross. Is that...
Well, that's what NASA said, didn't he? NASA Hussain had a nice little monologue at the end, and it's like Test cricket is alive because England are doing well. Like, I'm not quite sure that's true, but it is alive in terms of the energy that is available in this world right now.
I tell you what, there are 2 times since 2005 that I remember people in a pub actually actively watching cricket. One of them was yesterday. After our game, we were sitting out. We were actually watching it on a phone, and there was a pub next door to us, and they were slightly ahead of us. So we knew whether a 6 had been hit by head because the Australians were cheering, and we knew when a wicket had been taken by England because the English people were cheering. That just does. People do that for football in England. They don't do that for cricket. Like the cricket might be on in the background, and 1 in 5 people in the pub might be roughly keeping track of the score. That's the kind of level that it normally sort of exists at. People were properly going mad about it. The other time, obviously, the 2019 World Cup final did have a big cut through. It was on free to air, and it was a home World Cup, so people were aware that was happening. And actually, a little bit Ben Stokes getting blasted around the ground. I remember seeing that where I was for that. People were watching that, but I think that was kind of by accident. I don't think people had gone out.
Test match, right? To watch the test match, isn't it?
Yeah, and people are that into it, and it's just brilliant. I think for the sport, and the matches have been so good. Well done, everyone. Well done, cricket. Max, your final reflection. See us out.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so glad that the series is still going because, like you said, if it had been 3-0, it would have been a real shame. Not just from an English point of view, from the point of view of 2 tests to go on the back of 3 of the most engaging and nip and tuck back to front enthralling Test matches that I can genuinely remember. They've been incredible, and people I know who just aren't really that bothered by Test cricket. It's just have been I've been following, and it's been amazing. It's been so So exciting. And finally, obviously, England getting over the line makes it a whole lot better. And it was a nervy afternoon, but I'm glad they made it. I'm happy. I'm looking forward to the next one. It's a shame it's 9 days away though. That's the give it more back-to-back cricket.
What are we going to talk
Bust
about?
their legs. I don't care.
We should briefly say that the women's Ashes are still alive, so we'll try and get a show in where we focus on that a little bit more closely this week. Another record crowd for the match at Lord's yesterday, and Alice Capsey going ballistic to help England win that one. Should we wrap up, boys?
Yep, thanks everyone for
Right,
watching.
Rob. Yeah. Remember, you can find us on socials at the Cricket Pod. Head to the show notes for all the important links: our Patreon, our sponsors, Facebook page. We can put our Threads link in there. Coffee. Get some coffee. I'm going to have some coffee. Not tonight. Tomorrow morning. Like a normal person. Goodbye.